My name is Eleanor Vance. I am 62 years old. For the past 35 years, I have been a lead structural materials engineer specializing in aerospace titanium composites. In my industry, precision is not a luxury, it is absolute baseline of survival. When you manufacture components for satellite thrusters and high-altitude orbital vehicles, a microfracture invisible to the naked eye can cause a catastrophic structural failure 300 miles above the Earth's surface. In 35 years of running Vanguard Aerospace Precision, the specialized manufacturing firm I founded from the ground up, I have never authorized a defective component for launch. Not a single microscopic deviation in density, not one. So when I eventually isolated 42 fabricated supply invoices buried within my own company's logistical ledgers, I did not mistake them for clerical errors. I recognized them exactly for what they were: deliberate structural sabotage. They were authored by my husband. It began on a Tuesday afternoon in early October. I was driving past my daughter-in-law's newly renovated suburban estate. I had a specialized custom machined set of pediatric leg braces resting in the passenger seat of my vehicle. My grandson Leo suffers from a rare musculoskeletal condition, and standard medical braces caused him severe dermal irritation. I had utilized my firm's lightweight aerospace-grade polymers to design and machine a custom set for him. I thought I would surprise her with the delivery, but when I identified my husband's distinctive black SUV parked behind the tall perimeter hedges of her gate, my internal threat detection systems initiated. What I intercepted through the cracked French doors of her sunroom shattered the load-bearing columns of my reality. But the affair was merely the surface fracture. Beneath it was a void of financial extraction. Over $250,000 siphoned from our aerospace firm through 42 fabricated invoices. A luxury high-rise penthouse in Miami secured with my capital, and an engineered legal strategy to force the liquidation of my life's work, leaving me fundamentally bankrupt. My husband failed to account for one critical variable. I am an aerospace structural engineer. I stress test everything until the exact point of failure. Welcome to the documentation of a catastrophic failure. If this narrative resonates with the structural compromises in your own life, ensure you subscribe and leave a comment below. Eleanor Vance, lead engineer, 35 years standing on the reinforced concrete floor of Vanguard Aerospace Precision in Huntsville, Alabama. We are not a conglomerate. We employ 80 specialized machinists, metallurgists, and technicians. But our components are currently orbiting the planet. My father was a union steelworker in Pittsburgh. He spent his entire life working with heavy, unforgiving metals in temperatures that routinely exceeded 110 degrees. He taught me that metal does not lie, it possesses exact limits, precise melting points, and absolute yield strengths. You cannot charm a piece of titanium into holding a load it is not mathematically designed to bear. I funded my own education at MIT through academic scholarships and nocturnal shifts at a demanding rapid prototyping lab. I graduated in the top 1% of my materials science cohort. I launched Vanguard when I was 27, utilizing a risk profile as BA loans, leased industrial equipment, and an unyielding belief that the aerospace sector desperately required a boutique manufacturer capable of executing zero-tolerance precision without the bureaucratic latency of the contractors. 35 years later, we are an elite classified vendor for 3 of the primary aerospace defense contractors in the nation. I know the exact tensile strength of every alloy in our inventory. I know the thermal expansion coefficients of our thruster housings. I know that Jenkins, my lead CNC operator, requires precisely 2 cups of black coffee before he calibrates the 5-axis mill. Major contractors trust me with the structural integrity of vehicles that hold human lives in a vacuum. I simply lacked the baseline data to realize I could not trust the man I built the corporate architecture with. Vanguard Aerospace sits in an industrial park off the primary interstate. It is a massive, environmentally controlled facility. It perpetually smells of ozone, industrial coolant, and the sharp metallic tang of machined titanium. The heavy blast doors engage with a distinct pneumatic hiss every morning. I have walked that concrete floor for 3.5 decades, and I carry the ambient scent of the facility home with me every evening. Arthur used to remark, with a localized smirk, that I smelled like a machine shop. He was empirically correct. I smelled like 35 years of unrelenting operational execution. The firm is not simply an LLC in my portfolio, it is my literal fingerprint on the physical world. I have authorized thousands of critical components for orbital launch. Zero catastrophic failures. It compiles that the most complex variable to accurately measure was the structural integrity of the lies propagating at my own dining room table. Arthur Vance is 65. He married me when he was 25 and I was 22. 43 years of joint operational history. Arthur managed the logistics, I managed the engineering. I measured tolerances, authorized CAD models, and oversaw production. He managed supply chain vendor relationships, logistics, and payroll. We were theoretically a optimized binary system. He was genuinely skilled at logistics. For 35 years, Vanguard Aerospace executed a profit margin every single fiscal quarter. Not astronomical software margins, but solid, heavy industry profit. Sufficient capital to eliminate the mortgage on our primary residence. Sufficient capital to fund Julian through an elite architectural graduate program at Columbia University. Sufficient capital to inject a $60,000 cash down payment into Julian and Chloe's initial real estate acquisition. 4 years ago, Arthur developed a severe cardiovascular condition. The specific variety of arterial blockage that renders managing a high-stress supply chain, negotiating with aggressive global vendors, and pacing the concrete floor a physiological risk. One evening, he sat across from me in our minimalist kitchen and sighed heavily. "Eleanor, my system cannot sustain the pressure. I need to transition to a dormant state. You manage the primary operations." I immediately retained Patricia Rollins, an aggressive, meticulous corporate controller, to manage the logistical bookkeeping. Patricia had executed freelance audits for us for a decade. She understood our supply chains, our raw material fluctuations, and our seasonal production bottlenecks. I absorbed the executive oversight of both the engineering floor and the broader corporate strategy. I did not complain. I calculated that Arthur had earned his operational retirement. 43 years is a duration, but Arthur did not actually transition to a dormant state. He initiated a consistent pattern of visiting Julian's suburban estate. He began assisting Chloe with her elaborate landscaping projects, managing the contractors for her kitchen renovation, and providing childcare for Leo and Maya so Chloe could attend her elite yoga retreats and high-society philanthropic luncheons multiple times a week. I was genuinely grateful. Retirement is psychologically brutal for men like Arthur. He transitioned from directing a logistical network to possessing zero daily authority. I hypothesized Chloe was intentionally integrating him to maintain his psychological stability. I perceived it as an endearing dynamic and aging executive finding renewed purpose as a dedicated grandfather. I miscalculated exactly what was helping him manage. Julian Vance, my son, 38 years old, a senior commercial architect at a prestigious regional firm. Steady, analytical, mathematically grounded, he generates $140,000 annually. He is unconditionally devoted to his 2 children, Leo, who is 6, and Maya, who is 4. Julian returns from his architectural firm, constructs complex Lego architectures with his children, and maintains a quietly fulfilled existence. Julian never demanded a life beyond the stable parameters he had successfully constructed. Chloe Vance, 33 years old, a former luxury real estate staging consultant who transitioned into a curated lifestyle influencer. She married Julian 7 years ago, a massive ostentatious wedding at a botanical garden that Arthur and I primarily funded. I personally engineered and machined the custom titanium archway they stood beneath. Chloe originated from a financially unstable background in a crumbling industrial town. Her parents were perpetually navigating bankruptcy. Chloe desired upward mobility. I distinctly recall a specific interaction during a holiday dinner 2 years ago. The entire family was assembled at our expansive dining table. Chloe leaned toward Julian, her vocal tone laced with a specific calibrated dissatisfaction. "Don't you ever want to design something significant? A high-rise in Dubai? Don't you want to actually travel somewhere exclusive instead of this endless suburban loop?" Julian offered a mild, contented shrug. "I appreciate our current scale, Chloe. I like our environment." Chloe terminated her verbal output, but her silence was deafening. "I know you do." I logged that specific silence. I recognized it as the frequency of a woman running a cost-benefit analysis on her primary partnership and discovering a deficit. I had observed identical micro-expressions in junior executives who were preparing to jump ship to a rival contractor. I should have escalated my threat detection protocols regarding that silence, but I was focused on the engineering floor. I am perpetually focused on the engineering floor. Arthur escalated his visitation frequency to 4 or 5 times a week. assisting with the landscaping, teaching Leo how to identify bird species, supervising the installation of high-end appliances Chloe impulsively ordered. I thought it was a beautiful adaptation. I was proud of Arthur for remaining engaged. I was calibrating my pride to the wrong dataset. 6 years ago, Arthur was 59, still managing the Vanguard logistics, still sitting across from me reviewing the quarterly yield reports. A logistical contact from an international shipping firm introduced him to an exclusive, invite-only vintage automotive auction platform. "Just observe it, Art," the contact had stated. "It's a fascinating alternative asset class." Arthur observed, then he registered, then he executed a bid on a restored 1960s Porsche. He won the auction. The vehicle required massive specialized restorations. The dopamine spike of the acquisition hit his neurological receptors like a hammer. The subsequent month he acquired a vintage Jaguar. Then a classic Mercedes that required a complete engine rebuild. Within 2 years, Arthur was dropping tens of thousands of dollars on imported parts, specialized European mechanics, and off-site climate-controlled storage facilities that he hid from my view. The platform and the restoration ecosystem were designed exactly like a casino, an endless cycle of identifying the next perfect acquisition, the next rare component draining capital with brutal efficiency. The house always wins. The luxury acquisition market is engineered to extract maximum capital from men desperate for a tangible legacy. By year 4, Arthur had accumulated over $110,000 in undisclosed, leveraged debt tied to these vehicles and their endless restorations. He could not transmit this data to me. I managed the corporate and household capital with the exact same zero-tolerance precision I applied to aerospace titanium. I would have detected the structural deficit instantly. I extracted the raw data significantly later. Arthur initiated his capital extraction from Vanguard Aerospace in year 3. He did not siphon liquid cash. He utilized his logistical access. He manufactured fabricated raw material suppliers, Apex Titanium Logistics, Strata Alloy International, Horizon Precision Metals. None of these entities possessed a physical or legal reality. He manually generated the invoices on our corporate letterhead, digitally authorized the purchasing orders utilizing his administrative credentials, and issued the payments directly to encrypted accounts he controlled. 42 fabricated invoices across 3.5 years. The amounts were calibrated: $4 $200, $5 $100, $6 $800, $3 $900. Always remaining below the $700 $500 threshold that would automatically trigger a secondary authorization from my engineering terminal. The aggregate total, $260. Where was the capital routed? $110 to liquidate his vintage automotive debt. 65 dozen untraceable cash transfers to Chloe, categorized in his personal ledger as home improvement assistance. 90s as a direct, unassailable wire transfer for a down payment on a luxury penthouse in Miami, Florida. The title was registered exclusively in Chloe's name, with her sister Vanessa acting as the cosigner and facilitating broker. My husband extracted $250,000 from the aerospace firm I constructed with my own intellect. He utilized fabricated supply invoices the exact same way a corrupted structural engineer falsifies stress test reports. And I, the lead engineer who verifies every single tolerance, never verified his data packets because I implicitly trusted his structural integrity. 24 months prior to the catastrophic dinner sequence, Arthur escalated his presence at Chloe's estate to a near-constant baseline. Not merely weekends but Tuesday mid-mornings, Thursday afternoons, any temporal gap in Julian's architectural schedule. Chloe was a strategic operator, not an impulsive one. She manipulated her environment the precise way I manipulate thermal parameters: incremental, calculated, data-driven. The initial phase was pure validation. "Arthur, you possess such incredible logistical vision. Julian simply lacks the capacity to manage complex projects." She transmitted the specific audio frequencies Arthur had not intercepted since his retirement. That he was vital, that he possessed authority, that a younger entity recognized his value. The secondary phase was financial extraction. "Arthur, could you potentially assist with the property tax this quarter? Julian's firm delayed his bonus and we are experiencing a severe liquidity crisis." Arthur authorized a $40,000 transfer from his personal accounts without a microsecond of hesitation. The tertiary phase was physical integration, a hand lingering on his forearm during a kitchen consultation. An embrace at the doorway that extended 3 seconds beyond standard familial parameters. The calibrated physical attention that a 65-year-old man experiencing a crisis of relevance instantly processes as profound affection. By the 6th month, the sequence had escalated to a fully executed affair. Arthur arrived at the estate when Julian was strictly bound to his architectural firm. Chloe consistently maintained the cracked French doors in the sunroom. The HVAC zoning is malfunctioning, she claimed. Julian possessed zero data regarding the malfunction. Chloe had instructed the technicians to cancel the repair ticket. She did not experience a romantic paradigm shift toward my husband. She ran a cost-benefit analysis on him the exact way she ran it on Julian. Only this time she was calculating his corporate equity, his leverage, and his psychological vulnerability. Chloe initiated a secure audio transmission to her sister Vanessa, a luxury real estate broker in Miami. Vanessa subsequently leaked the data during her own legal panic, which is how I possess the exact transcript. He holds 50% equity in an aerospace firm valued at over $6 million. Chloe had stated, her vocal cadence devoid of empathy. He owns a primary estate with zero debt, retirement accounts, and he is isolated. This is the most efficient acquisition I have ever targeted. Vanessa queried, what is the threat model regarding his wife? Chloe responded, she is married to her titanium. She will survive. My daughter-in-law dismissed my entire existence with 10 words. She lacked the fundamental intelligence to comprehend that the specific firm she so casually dismissed was the exact tactical weapon I would utilize to systematically dismantle her entire reality. 12 months prior to the dinner, Arthur and Chloe's extraction protocol fully compiled. And it was Vanessa, the sister, the real estate broker, who engineered the structural mechanics of the fraud. Phase 1, Chloe identified a luxury high-rise penthouse in Miami. Panoramic ocean views listed at a distressed price of $450. Down payment required, $90. The capital was sourced from Vanguard Aerospace, funneled through Arthur's fabricated invoices, and executed as a direct wire transfer to a Miami escrow agent. Phase 2. Vanessa facilitated the transaction and acted as the primary cosigner, as Chloe lacked the independent income to qualify for the mortgage. The deed was registered exclusively in Chloe's name. Arthur's name and my name were isolated from the documentation. Structurally clean on paper, invisible to any entity not running a forensic audit. Phase 3, Chloe would initiate a high-conflict divorce against Julian. Vanessa's strategy was optimized: file in the spring when family courts experience backlog, establish primary residency at the Miami penthouse, and document Julian's chronic emotional absence and neglect. She staged photographs of Leo and Maya playing in the driveway, utilizing forced perspectives to make normal play appear dangerously unsupervised. Phase 4, Arthur would initiate a divorce against me. The legal grounds would be irreconcilable differences. He would demand Vanguard Aerospace be liquidated and the capital split exactly 50-50. At a $6 million valuation, Arthur projected he would extract $3 million in liquid capital. Phase 5, Arthur permanently relocates to the Miami penthouse with Chloe and my grandchildren. $3 million generating yield, his retirement income covering operational overhead. Chloe terminates her influencer simulation and lives purely on the extracted wealth. My husband was planning to liquidate the aerospace firm I built. The firm with my name on the foundational charter, the components I engineered that are currently preventing satellites from burning up in the atmosphere. He intended to convert my life's work into liquidity to fund a new existence with my daughter-in-law. I intercepted his exact audio transmission through the cracked French doors. She does not have to authorize the sale, Chloe, Arthur stated, his voice confident. I am a 50% equity partner. The court will mandate the liquidation during the asset division. He fundamentally forgot that I am the sole entity who generated the $6 million valuation in the first place. Tuesday afternoon, early October, the primary argon gas welding array on the engineering floor experienced a catastrophic pressure drop. I initiated an immediate shutdown of the line and departed the facility early, as production was stalled until the replacement valves arrived on Wednesday. I navigated my vehicle toward the suburbs, the custom titanium pediatric braces resting on the passenger seat. I intended to conduct a brief 10-minute drop-off to improve Leo's mobility before navigating home to analyze the Q3 production metrics. I turned onto Julian's quiet, manicured street and instantly identified Arthur's black SUV parked behind the privacy hedges. Julian is mandated to remain at the architectural firm until 6 on Tuesdays. I know his operational schedule with the same precision I know the melting point of grade 5 titanium. I parked exactly 50 meters down the street outside the visual range of the primary cameras. I approached the perimeter, the front access point was secured. I navigated the side perimeter. The French doors to the sunroom were cracked open, the HVAC was allegedly malfunctioning. I intercepted Chloe's audio transmission first. We need to accelerate the timeline, Arthur. I want to be established in Miami before the winter holidays. Chloe, I am executing the protocol as rapidly as possible, Arthur responded. I have to force the liquidation of Vanguard first. That requires extreme precision with the legal filings. Does she possess any data regarding the extracted capital? Zero, Arthur stated confidently. I generated every invoice personally 35 years and she never once audited my logistical ledgers. Chloe generated a low dismissive laugh 35 years and she still operates on blind trust. That is Eleanor's primary flaw, Arthur analyzed. She stress tests every single component on the floor, but she never stress tests me. Then absolute silence followed by audio artifacts I refused to transcribe into this log. I remained stationary beside the rhododendron bushes, the titanium pediatric braces gripped in my right hand. The metal was cool and absolute. I remained frozen for exactly 90 seconds. That is the precise duration required for 43 years of joint operational history to experience a catastrophic structural failure. 90 seconds. I have overseen titanium cooling cycles that demand exponentially more time. I did not breach the doors, I did not initiate a kinetic confrontation, I simply rotated my physical coordinate, navigated back to my vehicle, placed the braces on the passenger seat and drove directly back to Vanguard Aerospace. I bypassed the engineering floor, I unlocked the primary administrative office, sat behind my executive terminal, and stared at the blank monitor. I have occupied that specific chair for 35 years. I have received catastrophic updates in that chair: a failed launch sequence, a supply chain collapse, a critical audit from the Department of Defense. I have never once frozen, I always possessed the exact countermeasure. This time I remained immobilized for a full 60 minutes before the logic gates in my brain re-engaged. Then I accessed the secure server, opened the encrypted logistical archives and pulled the raw purchasing data for the previous 5 years. The facility smelled exactly as it always does: ozone coolant, metallic precision, familiar. Absolute mine. I was preparing to stress test his operational integrity. The precise way I should have been testing it for the past 43 years. Monday morning, 0500 hours, I was at the Vanguard Aerospace facility exactly as I had been every single operational morning for 35 consecutive years. However, before I manually engaged the primary production sign to open, I systematically extracted every single logistical invoice from the previous 5 fiscal years. I physically pulled them, filing cabinet by filing cabinet, encrypted folder by encrypted folder. 5 entire years of complex purchasing records stacked meticulously on my primary engineering terminal like an impenetrable wall of raw, undeniable data. I systematically analyzed Arthur's authorized supplier list. Names I implicitly recognized from decades of operational history: Apex Titanium, Global Alloy Dynamics, Stratoforge Heavy Industries. The legitimate, verified distributors, the entities I had personally negotiated with for decades. Then I identified the anomalies, the names I did not recognize: Horizon Precision Metals, Apex Titanium Logistics, Strato Alloy International. I audited Horizon Precision Metals first. 0 registered corporate website, 0 functional contact number, 0 verified business registration with the state of Alabama or the federal government. I cross-reference Apex Titanium Logistics, identical parameters. I audited Strato Alloy International. Identical, absolute void of data, 3 massive, heavily funded suppliers that simply did not exist in physical reality. I have been a lead aerospace materials engineer for 35 years. I possess absolute, encyclopedic knowledge of every legitimate metallurgical supplier in the North American aerospace sector. These specific corporate names were fabricated, they were phantom entities designed solely to extract capital. I manually counted 42 individual invoices generated from these 3 ghost corporations across 3.5 years. The sheer volume of capital required Patricia's meticulous forensic assistance to accurately tally. I dialed Patricia Rollins at exactly 0700 hours. "Patricia, I require your immediate presence at Vanguard," I stated, my vocal frequency devoid of emotion. "Not for the current fiscal books, for the archival data." Patricia paused. I could hear the cognitive calculation occurring in her analytical mind. "How far back into the archives, Eleanor?" 5 full years, I responded. "What exactly am I looking for?" She queried. "Everything that does not exist," I stated. Patricia arrived at the facility at 0800 hours. I officially opened the Vanguard production floor at 0900 hours, because our three primary defense contractors still required their specialized aerospace components machined and finalized. The United States government's satellite deployment schedule does not halt for a localized marital crisis. The orbital vehicles do not care about personal betrayal. I supervised the complex machining of 43 individual thruster housings that specific day. Zero critical errors, zero structural deviations. I have never allowed my localized personal chaos to compromise my absolute professional precision. I was not going to initiate that failure now. I began systematically placing the fabricated invoices into my heavily reinforced steel-lined executive portfolio. That specific portfolio had safely transported classified Department of Defense schematics for 3 decades. Now it was transporting the explicit, undeniable blueprints of my husband's financial treason. 12 consecutive days Patricia Rollins worked every single evening after the Vanguard production floor officially powered down at 1800 hours. And I remained stationary beside her until midnight. Her secured, climate-controlled office above the main engineering floor contained a drafting desk, a high-capacity secure server and a specialized forensic accounting interface. On the 12th consecutive evening, Patricia directed me to sit in the reinforced chair opposite her terminal. "Eleanor, I have audited every single invoice from these 3 fabricated suppliers," Patricia stated, her voice tight with uncharacteristic tension. She carefully placed her extensive physical notes on the drafting desk. "None of these entities possess a functional business registration with the state. 0 federal tax identification numbers, 0 physical corporate addresses." I manually dialed every single contact number listed on the invoices. "Every single line is permanently disconnected, all of them." She tapped the primary ledger. The final comprehensive tally: 42 fabricated invoices, exactly 3.5 years. Total extracted capital: $265,000. The specific amounts are calculated: $4,200, $5,100, $6,800. Always remaining below the $7,500 threshold that automatically requires your secondary biometric authorization. Patricia carefully laid the 42 fabricated invoices across my engineering drafting table. 42 physical pieces of evidence aligned in a flawless, terrifying row. I analyzed them the exact way I analyze a microscopic stress fracture in a titanium hull, checking for structural errors, checking for minute inconsistencies. There were 0 errors. Every single invoice was constructed. The localized formatting is correct. The specific line items: industrial coolant, specialist carbide drill bits, tungsten alloy rods, are accurate for a manufacturing facility of our specific capacity, Patricia noted. The line items are functionally real, the quantities make logistical sense, but the corporations do not exist. He operated within this facility for 35 years. He knew exactly what a legitimate authorized invoice required, because he personally processed legitimate ones every single day. "Eleanor, this is massive calculated embezzlement, $265,000 extracted from a jointly held aerospace corporation." "I know exactly what it is, Patricia," I responded, my voice cold and absolute. "I simply lacked the data regarding who the hostile actor was until this specific moment." I meticulously placed the 42 invoices back into the reinforced steel portfolio and engaged the biometric lock. 42 lies printed on Vanguard Aerospace corporate letterhead, permanently sealed inside the exact portfolio that used to transport orbital schematics for a man I implicitly trusted. The fabricated invoices confirmed exactly how much capital was stolen. Now I required the precise coordinates of where the capital was routed. I manually accessed our secured joint corporate banking servers. Every single fabricated check from Vanguard's operational account cleared through our primary joint account. Identical routing numbers, identical financial institutions for 35 consecutive years. The digital trail was not hidden, it had perpetually existed right there, merely waiting for an audit. $110,000 was systematically routed to an obscure specialized vintage automotive restoration facility and a classic car auction platform. I immediately ran a comprehensive digital background check on the platform using my secured terminal. An exclusive invite-only marketplace designed specifically to extract wealth from vulnerable men chasing a manufactured legacy. I have never gambled in my life. I do not engage in high-risk speculative investments. I believe in absolute structural engineering, not blind chance. My husband apparently believed in both. I analyzed the digital footprint further. Arthur maintained an active, secondary line of credit linked directly to the Vanguard operational account card he claimed he had cancelled and shredded 4 years ago. It was fully active monthly charges to specialized European automotive mechanics and climate-controlled storage facilities. Over 3.5 years, his automotive restoration deficit totaled exactly $110,000. He told me the account was permanently terminated. I implicitly believed his data. I never ran a secondary verification protocol because, in 35 years of joint operations, I had never required a reason to verify Arthur's structural integrity. That is exactly what Absolute Trust executes. It disables your localized threat detection systems. And when you disable your threat detection systems, you become blind to the structural collapse occurring directly in front of you. Patricia meticulously cross-referenced the remaining digital withdrawals. $65,000 in untraceable cash withdrawals that corresponded to the exact dates Arthur visited Julian's suburban estate. The data points matched against Julian's architectural firm work schedule, against Arthur's black SUV sighting dates, against our localized banking timestamps. And then the anomaly: $90,000 in a single expedited wire transfer routed directly to Miami Elite Escrow Services, a luxury real estate closing agent. $110,000 for vintage automotive gambling. $65,000 for my deceptive daughter-in-law. $90,000 for something I had not identified yet. But I would. The aerospace sector is massive, but the network of individuals who facilitate high-end real estate transactions is surprisingly compact. I initiated a secure encrypted call to Marcus Sterling in Miami. He was a specialized corporate real estate attorney I had frequently utilized during Vanguard's facility expansion 5 years ago. I had expedited a critical shipment of specialized titanium for his brother's marine engineering firm. Marcus inherently owed me a professional favor. In the high-stakes world of corporate logistics, favors possess a very long, very sharp memory. Marcus, I urgently require an aggressive favor, I stated. A brief calculated pause on the line, then, quiet compliance. I am listening, Eleanor. I need you to run a discrete comprehensive trace on a $90,000 wire transfer routed through Miami Elite Escrow Services approximately 12 months ago. Marcus could not legally transmit the confidential escrow documents, but he confidently stated, Eleanor, I can inform you that the final buyer's name on the deed is absolute public record at the Miami-Dade County Clerk's office. Anyone can legally access it. I immediately booked a first-class expedited flight to Miami. 2 hours and 45 minutes in the air, I physically arrived at the Miami-Dade County Clerk's office and manually pulled the property record. It required exactly 14 minutes of rigorous bureaucratic navigation. Final recorded buyer, Chloe Vance. Primary and facilitating broker, Vanessa Hale. Physical property, a luxury high-rise penthouse condominium overlooking South Beach. Total purchase price, $450,000. Initial down payment, $90,000. Remaining mortgage, $360,000. I remained stationary, staring directly at the physical document, under the harsh, flickering fluorescent lights of the county clerk's office. My manipulative daughter-in-law had acquired a luxury Miami penthouse utilizing $90,000 extracted from my aerospace firm. Her sister co-signed the loan. My husband's name appeared nowhere on the documentation because they were careful. Because they had engineered the entire transaction precisely to avoid my threat detection systems. But the financial data trail routed straight from Vanguard Aerospace operational account, through Miami Elite Escrow directly into this luxury penthouse. I meticulously photographed every single page of the public record, adding them to the reinforced steel portfolio. The portfolio was becoming thick: fabricated invoices, deleted banking statements, vintage automotive debt records, and now real estate documents. Right crime, exact amount, specific thief, triple-checked, exactly the same way I verify every single titanium thruster component I have ever authorized for orbital launch. I boarded the return flight, landed, drove directly back to the Vanguard facility, opened the production floor at 0900 hours, supervised the machining of 61 critical components, locked down the facility at 1800 hours, drove to my residential estate, prepared a standard time dinner for Arthur, sat directly across from him at our minimalist kitchen table, and silently watched him consume his meal. I did not shed a single tear that day. I successfully authorized 61 flawless components. 0 structural errors. Week 4 of the comprehensive investigation, I mandated Julian to meet me at the Vanguard facility after operational hours. At 1930 hours after the final machinist had exited the blast doors, Julian walked onto the silent concrete floor. He moved exactly the way he always had since he was 10 years old, hands in his tailored architectural jacket pockets, his head tilted at a slightly analytical angle. The exact same posture as his father, he visually located me standing behind my primary executive terminal. The exact coordinate I have occupied for 35 years. But my micro-expressions were different, and his analytical mind instantly recognized the shift. "Mom, what exactly is the critical issue?" he asked, his voice tight. He sat on the heavy reinforced steel chair I utilize for vendor negotiations. The chair groaned slightly. The facility was quiet, just the low ambient hum of the climate control systems maintaining the raw titanium temperature. I transmitted the data to him exactly the way I brief military contractors on a catastrophic structural failure. The side effects first. "Julian, your father has been visiting Chloe at your estate when you are strictly bound to your architectural firm, significantly more frequently than you possess data for. Then the primary diagnosis: they have been engaged in a fully executed affair for the past 20 months. Then the ultimate prognosis: he has extracted $265,000 from Vanguard Aerospace to fully fund the operation." Julian did not initiate a verbal response for a duration of time. I monitored his facial micro-expressions the exact way I monitor a piece of metal approaching its absolute yield point. First, aggressive denial: the ocular muscles narrow, the jaw permanently locks. Then, understanding: the ocular muscles widen, the skeletal structure drops. Then absolute cold rage: the hands close into fists. "Chloe and Dad," it was not a question, it was a bleak, hollow statement. "Yes," I confirmed. "How long have you possessed this data?" 4 complete weeks. "Why did you not transmit this intel to me immediately?" he demanded, his voice fracturing. "Because I required absolute, undeniable evidence, not volatile emotions," I stated flatly. "Physical evidence structurally holds up in federal court. Unregulated emotions do not." Julian pulled out his encrypted smartphone. He immediately accessed the localized tracking application without me even prompting the action. Chloe's digital signature showed her located at Vanessa's luxury apartment multiple times when Julian was strictly stationed at the architectural firm. The exact same specific timeframes: Arthur's black SUV was visually confirmed parked at Julian's estate. Chloe was not at Vanessa's apartment, she was physically at the estate with Arthur. Vanessa was the fabricated digital alibi. My analytical son handed me the absolute final piece of structural data. Not because I demanded it, but because he independently verified the metrics, and the undeniable truth was already there, merely waiting for someone to run the audit. Week 5 of the operation, Patricia Rollins' secured office above the Vanguard engineering floor. The specific mug on her drafting desk read "Data never lies." That specific evening, the desk was covered in raw intelligence. Left quadrant: 42 fabricated invoices from 3 phantom suppliers that do not exist in reality. Horizon Precision Metals, Apex Titanium Logistics, Strato Alloy International. Each individual invoice highlighted in bright yellow, meticulously annotated in Patricia's precise handwriting, cross-referenced with Arthur's secure banking records. Center quadrant: 3.5 years of debt charges to classic automotive restoration facilities and the vintage auction platform, routed through a credit line Arthur claimed was permanently terminated. Win-loss and debt statements meticulously calculated and verified. $110,000 in absolute negative equity. Right quadrant: the Miami luxury penthouse purchase documentation. Chloe Vance listed as the sole primary buyer, Vanessa Hale listed as the cosigner and facilitating broker. $90,000 in an initial down payment traced from the Vanguard corporate account through Miami Elite Escrow, every single digital wire transfer timestamped, encrypted, and structurally sourced. Also arrayed on the desk, $65,000 in untraceable cash withdrawals cross-referenced with Arthur's physical visits to Julian's estate. Julian's digital tracking data, the black SUV sighting timestamps, the comprehensive timeline of the affair, 20 months reconstructed from cellular location records, bank transaction logs, and Julian's strict architectural schedule. Patricia meticulously bound the entire data packet. 184 pages, a heavy dark titanium gray, cover the exact same shade as the raw aerospace alloys on the floor below. Numbered tabs, a detailed table of contents, a cross-referenced index. "Patricia," I stated, my voice echoing slightly in the quiet room. "This is the most critical structural audit I have ever authorized." Patricia looked directly at me over her wire-rimmed reading glasses. In 20 years of managing your corporate ledgers, Eleanor, I have never encountered data this structurally compromised. But the audit is flawless. Every single page sources back to a verified bank record, a public legal document, or an undeniable transaction. This portfolio is structurally airtight. I picked up the portfolio. I held it exactly the way I hold a newly machined prototype component with both hands, checking the precise tolerances one absolute final time before it is loaded onto a transport vehicle. The specialized custom machined set of pediatric leg braces for my grandson Leo rested on the far corner of Patricia's desk. I had brought them to finish calibrating the micro hinges during our grueling audit. Medical support for my innocent grandson, sitting exactly 3 inches away from the absolute evidence that would permanently destroy his manipulative mother and his treasonous grandfather. 184 pages, the most critical structural blueprint of my entire existence. And the exact blueprint I genuinely hoped I would never have to deploy. My husband extracted $265,000 from our aerospace firm using 42 fabricated invoices. He funneled $110,000 into vintage automotive debt. He handed my deceptive daughter-in-law $65,000 in untraceable cash, and utilized $90,000 to acquire a luxury Miami penthouse with my hard-earned capital. Her sister co-signed the fraud. My brilliant son possessed zero data regarding the extraction. And they were planning to liquidate the aerospace firm, my firm, and split the capital yield. I have been a lead structural engineer for 35 years. I have never authorized a single flawed component. Now it was time to execute the most structural demolition of my entire life. I initiated an encrypted communication with Richard Sterling the precise subsequent morning. Richard is an aggressive, experienced corporate divorce attorney and a former federal prosecutor. He is also a long-term logistics contact of mine. Exactly 3 years ago, his legal firm experienced a critical structural failure in their localized data servers. I had immediately dispatched Vanguard's elite IT security team off the books to permanently stabilize their network architecture. Small specialized industrial sectors possess very long, very sharp memories. Richard inherently owed me a professional favor. Richard, I require absolute legal representation. I stated a brief, calculated pause on the line, then quiet compliance. I am sorry, Eleanor, my office at 0800 hours. I also initiated contact with Patricia Wynn, an aggressive commercial litigation attorney stationed in Huntsville, specializing primarily in complex small business disputes and corporate embezzlement. Another former contact I had successfully navigated a logistical crisis for exactly 2 years prior. Richard's absolute legal assessment was executed first. Eleanor, in the state of Alabama, standard marital assets are typically split equitably during a divorce. Not 50-50 but reasonably close. He leaned forward across his mahogany desk. However, corporate embezzlement from a jointly owned aerospace firm permanently alters the structural physics of the negotiation. He violated explicit fiduciary duty. He utilized marital assets for an extramarital affair. He concealed vintage automotive debt. Any judge in this jurisdiction will legally view that as a severe dissipation of marital assets. You will legally extract significantly more than a 50% equity share. Patricia Wynn was significantly more aggressive. The embezzlement is criminal, Eleanor, not merely civil. $265,000 extracted through 42 fabricated invoices is a felony-level offense in this state. She paused, her eyes locking onto mine. You possess the absolute option to legally press federal charges. Whether you physically execute that option or not, the absolute threat of criminal prosecution grants you infinite leverage. You can demand he sign over his entire 50% equity share in Vanguard Aerospace permanently. I remain stationary. I do not desire petty emotional revenge, Patricia. I desire the permanent acquisition of my aerospace firm. Patricia did not physically blink. Then you will permanently acquire the aerospace firm. Richard informed me I would utterly dominate the divorce proceedings. Patricia informed me I would permanently retain the aerospace firm. Neither of them was surprised by the data. In a specialized industrial sector, when a lead aerospace engineer states there is a catastrophic structural failure in the logistical numbers, the entire sector inherently believes her because she has never been wrong before. Patricia Wynn traced Vanessa's explicit involvement within exactly 1 week. The digital paper trail was not hidden. It was officially filed in public records as the primary cosigner on the Miami penthouse mortgage. Vanessa had manually signed legal documents that listed the $90,000 down payment source as a gift from a family member. Standard real estate mortgage paperwork, standard bureaucratic checkbox, absolute standard federal lie. Patricia pulled me aside in her corporate conference room. That is explicit, undeniable mortgage fraud, Eleanor. The down payment was not a familial gift, it was embezzled from your aerospace firm. Vanessa officially co-signed a mortgage application utilizing false documentation regarding the source of funds. And she is not some naive, innocent bystander, she is a licensed luxury real estate broker. She knew exactly what she was signing. I meticulously reviewed the remaining intel Julian had extracted. On the shared desktop at Julian's estate, he had discovered Vanessa's additional tactical contributions. The fabricated photographic evidence of Julian's alleged parental neglect. Images of Leo playing harmlessly in the secure backyard, photographed from specific, forced perspectives that intentionally made normal childhood play appear dangerously unsupervised. Chloe had digitally transmitted them to Vanessa with toxic captions, captured another one. Julian left Leo unattended in the yard again. Julian also discovered the comprehensive divorce strategy timeline, a specific 14-step tactical operation Vanessa had manually typed and emailed to Chloe. It was organized precisely like a corporate acquisition brief, complete with explicit milestones and hard deadlines. Vanessa is a licensed luxury real estate broker. She knows exactly what legitimate, flawless documentation looks like because she creates legitimate documentation for a living. She co-signed a federal mortgage application fully funded with embezzled corporate capital. She fabricated photographic evidence against my brilliant son. She meticulously designed the entire divorce strategy precisely like a corporate acquisition, line by line, deduction by deduction. Only the explicit deductions were my absolute life savings and my innocent grandchildren's structural stability. I added Vanessa's entire section to the dossier, pages 143 through 184. The absolute final tab, a licensed real estate broker assisting her sister in committing federal financial fraud. In aerospace engineering, we possess a specific term for that exact kind of chemical combination. Contraindicated, you do not mix those specific elements, the resulting explosive reaction is permanently toxic. Exactly 2 weeks prior to the dinner sequence, I booked a rapid, expedited flight to Miami alone. I visually located the penthouse, a spectacular, high-rise luxury unit in a brand-new coastal development, featuring a wraparound balcony with panoramic views of the vibrant Atlantic Ocean. It was meticulously designed to visually simulate a fresh start. I stood stationary in the massive, secure parking structure for exactly 10 minutes, visually analyzing the towering building. This exact penthouse cost $90,000 of Vanguard Aerospace explicit operational capital. The panoramic view was undeniably spectacular. The ocean was flat and brilliantly blue in the afternoon light. I logically wondered if Chloe had stood in this exact physical coordinate, and thought about the aerospace engineer, whose 35 years of 0500 wake-up calls paid for it. I navigated back to the international airport and returned to Alabama. 5 hours of total transit time. I transmitted this classified intel to no one. The exact night prior to the dinner sequence, I sat at my minimalist custom-machined titanium kitchen table. The exact same heavy, indestructible table where Arthur and I have consumed 10,000 meals together, where we mapped out Vanguard's Phase 3 expansion, where we celebrated Julian's acceptance into Columbia University. The heavy 184-page titanium gray portfolio rested in my reinforced security briefcase by the chair. I meticulously reviewed every single page one absolute final time. Patricia's forensic calculations, Patricia Wynn's aggressive legal notes, Richard's comprehensive divorce assessment, the Miami condo records, the vintage automotive debt statements, the 42 fabricated invoices from 3 phantom corporations that never existed. I have meticulously checked critical aerospace prototypes 3 explicit times before authorizing deployment for 35 years. I checked this folder exactly 4 times, not because I logically doubted the absolute forensic accuracy, but because I demanded to be certain that when I sat directly across from my manipulative husband and transmitted the explicit data, every single word I stated would be exactly as precise as every titanium thruster I've ever authorized for orbit. I meticulously planned the exact dinner menu: slow-roasted beef tenderloin, Arthur's absolute favorite, heavily seasoned with crushed peppercorns and sea salt. Garlic-infused mashed potatoes, crisp asparagus spears lightly tossed in olive oil, and a massive, complex artisan salad. I baked a delicate strawberry cake for Maya because Maya is exactly 4 years old and she is completely, undeniably innocent in this operational betrayal. I would serve my manipulative husband his absolute favorite meal. And then I would serve him the absolute structural truth. In 35 years, I have never authorized a single flawed aerospace component. I was about to execute the most structural demolition of my entire existence. The absolute truth dispensed directly across a custom machined dining table, precisely in front of every single entity who either betrayed me or planned my permanent financial destruction. I meticulously prepared the roasted beef tenderloin. I carefully frosted the strawberry cake for innocent Maya. And I placed the massive 184-page titanium gray dossier directly into my reinforced security briefcase. Saturday evening, my residential estate, the exact expansive dining room I have utilized for 43 consecutive years. The custom machined titanium table, the 6 expensive modern chairs, the heavy minimalist stoneware plates, an expensive anniversary gift from Arthur's former corporate colleagues. I meticulously set the table exactly the way I set up complex diagnostic arrays on the engineering floor. Each specific element precisely in its assigned coordinate, each element possessing a specific operational purpose. The slow-roasted beef tenderloin rested precisely in the exact center of the table. Heat radiated off the seared exterior, garlic mashed potatoes in the heavy ceramic bowl I acquired during a high-level aerospace conference in Seattle exactly 10 years ago. Crisp, vibrant asparagus and one small pink cake designated for Maya, the frosting meticulously piped by the exact same calibrated hands that authorized the precise machining of critical orbital thrusters every single day. I wore my heavy dark corporate blazer. I physically transported myself straight from the Vanguard engineering floor, and I did not change my apparel. The distinct, metallic scent of industrial coolant, ozone and machined titanium physically entered the dining room with me. The unmistakable scent of 35 years of unrelenting operational execution. I required them to perceive me exactly as I truly am, an aerospace structural engineer. The woman who constructs the systems, Arthur, physically arrived first. He casually approached and placed a brief kiss on my cheek. The aroma is incredible, Eleanor. His vocal frequency was relaxed, unsuspecting. He possessed zero tactical data regarding the impending strike. Julian arrived next, physically carrying Maya, while Leo ran toward the kitchen island. Julian visually locked onto me across the room, and I held his ocular gaze for exactly 1 second. He knew I had briefed him exactly 2 weeks prior. Do not transmit any data. Allow me to fully execute the operation I had commanded. He offered a very brief, tight nod. Chloe breezed through the doorway wearing an expensive, pretentious designer sundress and luxury sandals, her blonde hair meticulously styled. She smiled at me. Hello, Eleanor. She utilized my first name as she always arrogantly did. I logged the precise interaction exactly the way I log a microscopic structural anomaly, quietly, meticulously, and with the absolute, undeniable knowledge that it was structurally fatal. Vanessa arrived last. She appeared visibly tense, surprised by her explicit inclusion. I possessed zero data. I was physically attending until Chloe suddenly transmitted an invite this morning. I required the entire extended family here, I stated coldly. It is a significant celebration. They systematically took their seats. Arthur meticulously carved the roasted beef tenderloin. He was exceptionally skilled with sharp instruments. Just unskilled with absolute structural truth. Positioned directly under the table beside my chair, rested my reinforced security briefcase. Inside it, the massive 184-page titanium gray dossier. Every single hostile entity consumed my meticulously prepared food. They sat comfortably at my custom machined table inside my residential estate, utilizing expensive utensils I personally purchased, consuming expensive cuisine I personally prepared. And 3 of them were actively planning to permanently liquidate my aerospace firm and abandon me. Arthur raised his expensive crystal wine glass to 35 years of Vanguard Aerospace success. Everyone raised their glasses. Julian barely moistened his lips. His jaw was permanently locked. His eyes stared at his expensive plate, at the roasted meat, at anything that was not his manipulative, treasonous father sitting directly across from him. I monitored the table exactly the way I monitor a volatile thermal reaction on the engineering floor. Arthur was relaxed, casually consuming roasted beef with the aggressive appetite of a hostile actor who genuinely believes he has successfully bypassed the entire security system. Chloe performing excessive manufactured warmth, touching Vanessa's arm, projecting the absolute illusion of an integrated family unit. Vanessa consuming her meal steadily, generating superficial conversation, oblivious to the impending tactical strike. Julian maintaining a physically clenched fist directly under the heavy table, his knuckles white with compressed rage. My manipulative husband casually toasted the aerospace firm. The exact firm he had massively stolen from, the exact firm he planned to permanently liquidate. He raised his expensive glass to 35 years of my unrelenting operational execution, and he smiled while he did it. I meticulously placed my expensive crystal glass on the table. I precisely folded my linen napkin and positioned it beside my heavy plate. I possess a critical data packet I intend to transmit before we consume dessert. Arthur looked up, slightly amused. A formal corporate speech? Something along those lines. I reached directly under the table. I momentarily paused the execution. Not yet, Julian, could you please escort Leo and Maya to the primary media room? There is a engaging structural documentary configured on the display. Julian instantly stood. He physically picked up Maya, who was drowsily consuming mashed potatoes, and grasped Leo by the hand. Come on, Leo, let's initiate the sequence. Grandma possesses critical data for the adults. I stated. Leo grabbed an extra artisan bread roll for transit. He waved at me, I waved back. I watched his small physical form exit the room. His custom pediatric leg braces, machined from Vanguard's elite aerospace polymers, precisely stabilized his every step. I machined those braces. I will perpetually continue to machine them, regardless of the absolute devastation that occurs at this table tonight. Leo will permanently retain his structural support. Julian firmly closed the oak doors to the media room. He returned and took his seat. I slowly analyzed Arthur, then Chloe, then Vanessa. 3 hostile entities who planned to dismantle my existence, sitting comfortably at my table, saturated with my roasted tenderloin. I reached into the reinforced security briefcase and placed the massive 184-page titanium-gray dossier directly onto the custom machined table, precisely adjacent to the primary serving platter. Roasted tenderloin on the left, 184 pages of absolute destruction on the right. I had meticulously served both, only one possessed a permanent expiration date.